Thanks very much, folks.
Thank you so much, Roz. That was a wonderful journey into different parts of the world and through the lens of so many diverse panelists. I want to really thank Chris in particular as a young girl moving from Sao Paulo, Brazil to California. It's such a different culture, but something greeted me in California, and it was called cornflakes. So it's just wonderful to have this new journey in my life with Kellogg's. So that was a taste of what is coming up in campaign 2, once we can use data analytics and put tools in the hands of producers and other value chain actors. So much good can come. And we now move to campaign 3 of Mission Food for Life. This is about how to digitally connect supply chains, creating end-to-end flowing data, and how trust and flexibility can then drive completely new ways of managing shocks, grasping opportunities, and pivoting into completely new business models. And I'd like to welcome Phil Morrill, who will host the next 2 panels. Phil is a partner at a venture capital firm, Main Sequence Ventures. He is an extraordinary leader and mentor in the Australian startup and scale-up ecosystem. Phil is much loved. He's also a board member of Food Agility, and Phil will be chatting to 3 different panelists to start off with. They are Sam McConnell, the Southern Chief Operating Officer of JBS, Ian Smith, the Head of Food Safety and Quality at Coles, and Jamila Gordon, the extraordinary founder and CEO of Lumachain. Sam, Ian, Jamila, can you please turn your mics and cameras on? And I will join you, Phil, at the very end of your next 2 panels.
Thank you, Mara. And welcome to Sam, Jamila, and to Ian. I am delighted to be a part of this incredibly important project to build more resilience together as a community into the Australian food agri-system. It's brilliant to have Sam here, who I'm getting to know quite well. Sam is the Southern Chief Operating Officer at JBS, and JBS is a remarkable company that is effectively, is it the biggest, Sam, meat processing company in the world, if not one of the biggest?
Yeah, it is, Phil.
It's an incredible operation, and I just can't even imagine the data that you have to deal with and wish you had. Ian is joining us from Coles, where he's head of food safety and quality. Coles has been doing a fantastic job keeping us all fed in these difficult times, and we can't wait to hear some more of your stories, Ian, about how you've been coping with that. And Jamila Gordon is here with us. Jamila I know quite well because my venture capital firm invested in her fabulous company, Lumachain, and we're going to hear how she's solving some of these data problems for companies like Coles and JBS. So welcome to the 3 of you. Thank you for being here.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you, Phil. Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
I think I'm going to start with a moment that is familiar to all of us consumers out there, because for certainly all of my life, companies like Coles have been doing a brilliant job helping me take for granted food. I walk into Coles, I can buy whatever I want from wherever in the world, and there it is, it's all provided for me. But a couple of months ago, I went and there was no meat, and there were a whole bunch of things missing, and something was wrong. Ian, what happened? And how could data have actually, helped the situation when that happened?
Well, there's lots of people that have discussed what's happened, but in basic terms, there was obviously a degree of panic buying that everybody knows about, and as that went through the store, it went from toilet rolls to cleaning products, pantry staples, and then eventually it got over to fresh food and predominantly produce and meat. So for those time frames and time lags that you need to purchase or get into your suppliers with to try and get the stuff onto the store, it does take a long time. So data and transparency of what we can supply to the customer would obviously help. Now, when you're talking to other areas of our business that affect the customer, there was a very large move to shopping locally, and then we had a move towards online shopping. Now, just to put that into some pretense, for the last 5 months, our online business has moved similar to the UK, which took 2.5 years to move forward. So there was a massive growth in that data digital experience. With regards to fresh food, the stock was there. It was just trying to get it through the supply chains faster. And with regards to communicating that information to the customer, it probably, we tried our best, but because there was that big time lag between getting that information into store and you going shopping, there was a bit of a lag that hopefully we can try and get that better in the future.
And so, we heard earlier from Shane from Mulgawi about how, he sort of needs 8 to 10 weeks notice. I mean, how are you doing that? How are you doing that today in Coles?
Well, if I take one fresh area, which is meat, we run a livestock model where we have teams out there actually buying cattle, lamb, etc. So we have plans in place, but when we saw those big spikes in demand, we then had to effectively get a shift on, get more people out into the market, start liaising more with our farmer partners, and linking up with Sam at JBS to make sure he can give us the right time in his factories and his processing plants to ensure that we put stuff on the shelves. And
how much notice would you normally give JBS for an order?
Normally, we run on an 84, 85-day plan. So right. we're looking that far ahead. But generally, when these things come, we had to switch on business continuity plans. We put on new suppliers. We had to get new labels, new packaging, and obviously day-to-day conversations with the likes of Sam and the teams at JBS or any of our supply partners, just to make sure we could get the stuff through the distribution centres and into stores.
Right. And do you have much insight into what's happening back at JBS at this moment, or are you just pushing requests into JBS?
Not pushing, daily conversations really. Obviously they've got a finite, so they haven't got a finite room to produce what we need. So as demand goes up, there's always going to be this lag. So the sooner we can get the information through the supply chain, the better.
Got it. Well, let's head over to you, Sam. So all this was going on for you. How did you react?
Thanks, Phil. Yeah, I think like to Ian's point there that we do have long plans out front. But what happened here was in this last, when COVID first hit and the panic buying started, we had to flip the coin around. We're generally 80 to 85% export and 15 to 20% domestic. So to help customers like Coles out, we were able to move a lot of product around, a lot of containers around, push out some of our export orders, and then process more livestock for Coles at a faster pace. There was certainly a lot of long days and long nights and organising it all, but that's what you've got to do for good customers. In doing all that, and then it's just been able to make sure that we're tracking it as we go along and knowing where the trucks are that can get to the DCs. Can we get the product out? Is the DC able to take it? To Ian's point before, it's all about shortening up the supply chain to make sure we can get more throughput.
And did you need to respond as well to the different kinds of customers, because food service decreased dramatically at exactly the same time that we all started moving to Coles to buy our meat? Did you see that happening in real time, and could you adapt in time?
Yeah, for sure. Look, our food service fell off the cliff overnight. I mean, the restaurant business was gone globally, not just in Australia. So for us, it was a massive shock. It's a big part of our premium programs is food service around the world. It didn't matter whether it was in the Middle East, North America, Europe or Asia, we had to move fast. We also have businesses in this country that just focus on food service. So we're able to move the meat around, and knowing where that product is and having to move fast is a critical one, because there's obviously a lot of money involved. Different customers wanted different things at different times. There was obviously also, we have a lot of meat on the water. So knowing where that product was, I've had to turn containers around. What are we going to do with it? Do we have to freeze it down? Some of our containers are worth 400,000 and 500,000 US each. We've got to freeze them down. They're probably worth 150 to 200,000. So there was a few sleepless nights, but we managed to get through it as good as we could.
And of course, you needed to also respond to the challenges with getting employees into workplaces during the thick of this. What was going on there?
Yeah, very good question. Actually, we found we put a lot of safety measures in place during COVID that we learnt from our brothers and sisters around the world. And we were very strict from the board down on how to implement that, make sure in every facility we did it. Didn't matter whether it was a feed lot, whether it was any of our processing facilities or small goods facilities. And we found that people were telling us that they felt safer coming to work than they did being at home. And our absenteeism, to be honest, has been the lowest it's ever been, and so is our people turnover. So that tells you that people actually did feel safe coming to work.
That's great. That's great. Now, Jamila, let's go over to you at Lumachain, because you're playing an important role in trying to sort of join up some of the gaps here and to allow the data to flow between at least these two different parts of the supply chain. Tell us more about what you're doing.
Thanks, Phil. That's a good question. In terms of food supply chain, when you look at it from an IT perspective, it's siloed. And what I mean by that, the companies in that supply chain, they often have good systems. And I know actually they do have good systems because I built my previous career on implementing those systems. But those systems don't talk to each other between companies. And you have siloed data, you have lack of transparency. And what Lumachain platform is doing is to create a system that connects that broken chain using, and it will give you real-time data. So Sam was just talking about ships got stuck middle of nowhere, not knowing where they were. Through Lumachain, you will be able to real-time know where each of your product is end to end. And we're using technologies like deep tech, algorithms, AI, which I will talk about later in details, and IoT devices, Internet of Things, to create that end-to-end visibility. And we create that end-to-end visibility because we want to answer questions like, where did my food come from? Where did my beef come from? What was the animal fed? Was it grain fed? Was it hormone-free? When it was transported from the farm to the processing plant, was it animal welfare taken into account? And all of that, and the benefits you get when you answer all of those and put all of that into a blockchain. We've seen earlier sessions talking about trust. Put that data into blockchain, then everyone in the supply chain can trust. And by having that and answering those questions, then it gives you that ability to say, we've reduced wastage. We've improved shelf life, which is really important to anyone in the fresh food industry, and food safety. And we're working with Coles in their premium beef brands, Coles Grace and Coles Finest, to provide that full end-to-end visibility. And it's really perfect because some of those products come from Sam's processing plants and JBS. So it's super, super exciting times in terms of tech, bringing that together.
That's an awful lot of data that you've just given us some examples of. And you mentioned AI. So tell me more about that. Why do we need artificial intelligence to look at this data? Is there something difficult about gathering the data?
The artificial intelligence has come from a long way for the last couple of years, and we are really doing cutting edge. We're using it at two levels. One is the actual food safety, and the other one is employee safety, especially in this COVID-19. So from a food safety perspective, I'll give you an example where we have our computer vision installed inside processing plants, where we're able to link a cut of meat to the animal it came from back to the farm. It's something that the beef industry has struggled for decades, but now Lumachain can provide that. And in fact, it's really fantastic for Australia, because Australia produces some of the highest quality beef in the world. And companies like JBS and Coles can showcase the amazing food, the amazing beef we create in Australia, both in Australia and export. And in terms of the workers and employee safety, we're looking at that same computer vision, looking inside the processing and food manufacturing plants, and looking if the employees have engaged any unsafe behaviors, like are they wearing the face masks, protective gear, are they doing lack of hygiene behaviors. All of that will be, the AI will capture it and alert a supervisor on duty immediately. And not only do that, but provide a training. This is why I'm saying it's world's first, a specific training for that individual employee related to that behavior and the language they prefer to speak via audio, if that's what they prefer.
It sounds incredibly powerful. So it's dynamically collecting the information that the whole supply chain is going to need, and especially around the food safety with this situation that Sam, now Sam, let's just go back to you on this. Now, when you've got this fabulous AI system working in JBS and all the other things that we're talking about, what's one thing that you might have in the future that you really want to see as soon as possible with this data nirvana that we're building?
Good question, Phil. And Jamila touched on it before. You know, we've got a lot of very good quality product in this country, and at the end of the day, we're not the most competitive country when it comes to production with our costs, as we all know. So we've got a lot of farm data. If we can have that, transform it through, remembering we're in a disassembly business. Most businesses assemble. They put things together. We buy something and we pull it apart, then we put it in a box and then we sell it. So there's a lot of difficulties going through that process. And if we're able to track that product from the farm gate through the processing facility, and then if it's going to Coles or it's going to an export customer, wherever, and then they are able to know exactly where that is and where it came from, then the word that everyone's used today is trust. And trust is it. Consumers will purchase again if they've got trust. If we can also help increase the shelf life and get rid of shrink, because that's a waste for everyone, it becomes very powerful. And at the end of the day, red meat has become a luxury item. You know, fresh food is a luxury item for everyone, but red meat's becoming very expensive. And therefore, if we want consumers to have trust in our product versus other countries, we need to have a sustainable, humanely run model.
Great, thank you, Sam. And Ian, sort of same question to you. What's a piece of data or a piece of information, the answer to a question, if you like, that you would really like to have in this sort of data system we're all building together?
Back to what Sam was saying about trust and impacting purchasing power. My kids today on the phone all the time, on the internet all the time, they've already made a decision about their purchase, they've already read. So if you linking it back to the farmer and actually putting our Australian growers back to a customer, then that is incredibly powerful.
Fantastic. Well, I actually think we're going to hear more about that in the next panel, which will be great, a great little segue. But Jamila, what about you? What's one question you want to be able to pull out of the Lumachain system in the future when we're all trusting each other and sharing our data?
I think that the food safety and the food traceability is a huge thing. But the other thing I really am excited about is the employee safety and training. That ability to use artificial intelligence to literally identify what the training skills that individual employees requires and delivering that into their own natural language is just so powerful.
Thank you, Jamila. And thank you, Ian. And thank you, Sam. Thanks for a great session.
Thank you, Phil.
Enjoy the rest of the day. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
You guys can turn off your cameras and microphones now. Thanks very much. And enjoy the next session, where we are going to hop on a virtual plane and head over to Tasmania.